Hi, I'm Mary Bergman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nantucket Preservation Trust. Welcome and thanks for coming to our annual August Fête. We're going to go on another video house tour. This time we're here at Five Corners. It's a very busy intersection, a very vibrant neighborhood, so you might hear the occasional car or two while we're talking here in the lawn and while we're in the house, just like if you were really here. The house is a very special house. It boasts 200 years of black ownership. Boston-Higganbotham House, those two names, Seneca Boston and Florence Higginbotham, they bookend the two owners of the home over that 200-year period. Today it's owned by the Museum of African American History, and we're very grateful to their staff for allowing us to take you on this tour of the house.
The Museum of African American History's mission is to inspire all generations to embrace and interpret the authentic stories of New Englanders of African descent and those who found common cause with them in their quest for freedom and justice. On Nantucket, the museum owns the African Meeting House and the Seneca Boston Florence Higginbotham House.
Hi, and welcome to the Boston-Higganbotham House. My name is Marsha Fader, and I am the architect for the restoration here for the Museum of African American History. It's called the Boston-Higganbotham House because those are the names kind of that sandwich, that are the bookends to this historical period of 200 years of African American ownership that began in around 1774 with Seneca Boston and ended with the death of Florence Higginbotham in 1974. So we are in this house, which we often call Nantucket's hidden jewel because it's very hard to see from the outside of the house that we have an 18th century house. But this is a house that has had what we call in the preservation world a historic structure report, which is incredibly significant, incredibly important as you begin any restoration project to determine essentially what is the preservation blueprint to be. And in this case, as we go through the house, you will see all 200 years of that ownership reflected in the work that we have done. So as we stand here in this room totally represents the earliest period, the 18th century. So this is the best of 18th century typical Nantucket fireplace paneling. And it's incredibly significant to have survived for over 200 years. And it's the best of what you would get in that period. So the panels are raised, they're beveled, there's a Bolection molding, and the room is exactly as it would have been in its size and form. It's significant to have survived, and we have done extensive paint research in this room and in all the rooms in the house so that we have repainted based upon one of the earliest colors that would have existed in this room, both on the fireplace paneling, on the trim, on the plaster walls. Seneca Boston was a formerly enslaved African American who lived on Nantucket. He was the third of 8 children born to Boston and Maria, who were enslaved by a Nantucketer named William Swain. There was an interesting schedule of manumission, it was called, whereby Boston and Maria, the parents, and their 8 children, at different times, most specifically for the children, when they turned 28, were freed by William Swain. So that happened for Seneca Boston in 1772. He had already married a local Wampanoag woman named Thankful Micah. And so by the time he was 30 years of age, he purchased this property and built this house soon after. And and then because his parents had been enslaved, they did not have a last name. And when Seneca became freed, he took his father's name as his surname. So then we have Seneca Boston. And Seneca lived here with his wife, Thankful, and they had 6 children. as we go through the years and through touring the house, it was primarily Seneca and Thankful's children and grandchildren who lived here until Florence Higginbotham. So they were the prime inhabitants, residents of this house, and they are the ones who had made certain changes that we have honored in our restoration, in our preservation blueprint. We are standing in what is the west front room of the Boston-Higganbotham House, and we tend now to call this the 19th century that we've moved into, but primarily because of the Greek Revival fireplace that you're looking at. When we began work, this was surrounded by bookshelves, it was painted white. We, as we've done throughout the house, did extensive paint study and found that the original color was black. And as we researched more into that period of history, came to learn that there was a very fashionable type of marble called porturo, black and gold marble. And it was a faux finish when you could not afford to have the real marble itself. So we've restored that portoro black and gold marble look. And this was done by our local Christina Wiggins, who did a number of the decorative finishes, the historic decorative finishes for us. In an 1836 division of the property, we found many interesting things about that. But in that division of property, this room, the west room, so it would have included this room and another back room, were deeded to William Boston. William, by occupation, was a trader. And it totally began to make sense with why this room, which would not have had this fireplace mantle originally in the 18th century, would have been upgraded by a person who was a trader by profession, who was very much understanding what was popular in the marketplace, what was trending, what was fashionable. And so that made the room kind of William's room as we've restored it to that period. We really don't know whether this wall would have had the fireplace paneling that Seneca had, but again, we're working with a preservation blueprint, which is to honor all the 200 years and all of the owners and whatever changes that they made. I think probably at another point, you might have noticed in the earlier visit to Seneca's fireplace that neither fireplace actually is a fireplace any longer. And that definitely has proven to be a bit of our, not really a challenge, because the blueprint is, as you know, to restore all of the periods, but we had the chimney removed by one of the last owners of the house. And again, we really couldn't put them back. So what you see here is not only faux marble, but a faux fireplace also, to the best of our ability. We are now in what we're calling Florence's 20th century kitchen. Florence Higginbotham was the last of the African Americans to own this house. She took possession around 1920 and died in 1974. The kitchen, as we're standing in this room, is the same kitchen from the 18th century. And so it has just grown and evolved, changed through the years to become Florence's kitchen. So I don't mean to offend Thankful Micah, because Thankful Micah would have been in this kitchen also, and that's important to note because that is one of the aspects of the Boston-Higganbotham House in total that has survived, which is the floor plan. So the rooms that we've gone into, this room, were all in the same arrangement and the same layout, the walls, the ceilings, and all of that has been restored with its original plaster. So as we stand here in what we're calling Florence's kitchen, behind this glorious household regal cook stove that I'll tell you more about, behind that you should also see that we have 18th century mantelpiece for what would have been the original fireplace for cooking. So it's in this alcove where we came to learn, in our process of restoration, we came to learn that a certain literal pile of cast iron pieces that we had in the basement that we really didn't identify, came to be identified after a visit of Florence's daughter-in-law, that it was Florence's cook stove. So originally the stove had 8 wood-burning burners and 3 gas, and this has been restored not only to be a beautiful, beautiful feature in the house, but it is actually code compliant, and we've had it brought back to life so that it will be the active stove working in this kitchen. We also have, although this is our centerpiece for sure, we have Florence's original cabinet work, her floor cabinets, her wall cabinets. We have the sink cabinets, all that have been restored. We are in the east chamber on the 2nd floor in one of the original bedrooms. It certainly has had a number of changes over the 200 years, but we have restored the room as it would have been when Florence Higginbotham owned it. What's important in the view that you're getting of this room is that we have 2 large 2-over-2 windows that are part of a roof dormer that were added by Florence. And so in this room originally you would have certainly had a window, but it was just one window, which is the one facing on this east wall. These other 2 windows would not have been here, and you can actually see the original roof line by the height of the corner post here and by this slope where there would have been this framing beam going across, and certainly no space to have windows. We are in what we call Florence Higginbotham's sunroom, and we are on the west side of the house. I often think of Florence as a mover and shaker because Florence was a single mother. She had 1 child, and she had the resources enough to purchase this house in 1920. And then by 1930, she had built 3 additional structures, 3 other outbuildings that are on the property that are also been restored for the museum. And she made extensive changes in the house. And certainly they were in the category of very practical changes. You can see on this particular model, it included raising the roof, this back portion, which is the north slope of the back roof, which was the 2nd time. The 19th century it had been raised for the 1st time, and so you lost that, what you can see here as the slope of the original lean-to shape to this. She also added the sunroom that we're standing in, added a front porch, was at the street front, added 2 dormers, and removed the central chimney. So those changes certainly allowed access to more space, to probably at least 2 additional rooms on the 2nd floor. Removing the chimney allowed her to put a staircase that gave access to those 4 rooms on the 2nd floor. But those changes are all with us today.